You are sitting at a crowded table at a chain steakhouse. It is a Saturday night. The air is loud, smelling of fried onions, spilled beer, and the overwhelming perfume of the waitress walking past your booth. You are here for your father-in-law's 65th birthday. Across the table, your wife Sarah is cutting a piece of grilled chicken for your 4-year-old daughter. The waitress drops the bill in the center of the table. It is encased in a black leather booklet. Your brother-in-law, Marcus, looks at the booklet. He takes a long sip of his draft beer, wipes his mouth with a napkin, and looks directly at you. "Well," Marcus says, grinning, his voice loud enough for the entire table to hear, "since you finally got that director title last month, I'm assuming you're picking up the tab tonight. You guys are rolling in it now." The table goes quiet. Your father-in-law looks down at his plate. Your mother-in-law smiles an awkward, tight little smile. Sarah stops cutting the chicken. She doesn't look at you, but you can feel the immediate, invisible tension radiating off her shoulders. Marcus is waiting for an answer. He is half joking, but only half. You look at Marcus. You look at the black leather booklet. You do not tell Marcus that yesterday morning, the balance in your Vanguard brokerage account crossed $1.2 million. You do not tell him about the $80,000 sitting in a high-yield savings account, or the fully funded 529 plan for the little girl eating chicken beside you. You let out a practiced, self-deprecating laugh. "Man, I wish," you say, shaking your head and reaching for your wallet. The new title just means more emails. Between the property taxes going up and the roof leaking last month, the promotion didn't even touch the sides. We're getting killed right now. You pull out a credit card, drop it on the tray, and push it toward the center of the table. "I'll split it with you, though." Marcus nods, seemingly satisfied. The tension instantly evaporates from the table. The conversation shifts to sports. The crisis is averted. Under the table, Sarah rests her hand gently on your knee. Just for a second. It is a silent communication. It is the acknowledgement of the mask you both just wore and the massive, heavy secret you are both keeping. 40 minutes later, you are driving home. The kids are asleep in the back seat of your 2015 Honda CR-V. The highway lights flash rhythmically across the dashboard. The car is quiet. "You played that perfectly," Sarah says, staring out the passenger window into the dark. "The roof leak was a nice touch," you reply. "It grounds it, makes it relatable." You both smile in the dark. It is not a malicious smile. It is the deep, intimate smile of two people who are operating a highly secure, heavily fortified financial submarine in waters where everyone else is sinking. You didn't always lie to your family. 8 years ago, when you and Sarah first started making decent money, you were open about it. You talked about your savings rate. You talked about the excitement of buying your first index funds. You thought financial literacy was something you could share. But you learned very quickly what happens when money becomes visible. You watched it happen to Sarah's uncle. He sold a modest commercial landscaping business for $2 million. He didn't brag, but the family knew. And the moment they knew, the temperature of every room he walked into permanently changed. The money became an invisible elephant. Relatives who hadn't called in years suddenly reached out with can't-miss real estate opportunities. When the family went out to dinner, everyone lingered when the check arrived, assuming the uncle would pick it up. Because after all, he had it. Why wouldn't he? When her uncle finally started saying no, he didn't look financially responsible to them. He looked greedy. He looked like a man hoarding water in a desert while his family was thirsty. The money didn't buy him respect. It bought him isolation and resentment. You and Sarah sat at your kitchen table the week after her uncle's funeral. You looked at your own spreadsheets. You were 28 years old. You had $40,000 saved. You made a vow that night. You decided that your wealth would be a ghost. You built the architecture in total silence. You set up the automated transfers. On the 1st and 15th of every month, cash was mercilessly pulled from your checking account and pushed into VT Sachs, a total stock market index fund. You didn't pick stocks. You didn't buy crypto. You didn't do anything that required a celebratory post on the internet. You just bought the largest, most boring slice of the American economy you could afford, and you left it completely alone. As your careers grew, the incoming cash flow expanded. You went from making a combined $90,000 a year to $170,000, and eventually to $220,000. But you pegged your visible lifestyle to the $90,000 level. You stayed in the same 3-bedroom house you bought when you were 27. The paint on the garage door is currently peeling. You haven't repainted it, partly because you haven't had time, and partly because the peeling paint is incredible camouflage. The neighbors look at the garage and assume you are stretched thin, just like they are. You kept the 2015 CRV. You buy your clothes at generic department stores. When you go on vacation, you do not post photos of the resorts. You manufacture the appearance of financial friction. When Marcus complains about inflation and the cost of groceries, you complain with him. You nod sympathetically. You complain about the price of gas. You complain about the utility bills. You perform the exact script of the stressed, middle-class American, because that script is the ultimate armor. If they think you are struggling, they do not ask you for loans. They do not pitch you terrible business ideas. They do not expect you to subsidize their expensive, performative lifestyles. They treat you like a human being, instead of a walking ATM. The invisible math of this secret is staggering. Because you never upgraded the house, because you never financed the luxury SUVs, because you never inflated your lifestyle to match your corporate titles, the gap between what you earn and what you spend became a canyon. You are currently pushing $6,000 a month into the market, every 30 days. But the real magic isn't your contributions anymore. The real magic is what happens when a secret is left alone in the dark for a decade. Last year, the stock market returned roughly 14%. 14% of $1 million is $140,000. While you were sleeping, while you were driving the kids to daycare in the CRV, while you were splitting the check at the chain steakhouse with Marcus, your portfolio generated $140,000 in unrealized gains. Your money made more money last year than you did at your actual job. The machine has achieved escape velocity. It is now completely self-sustaining. But the outside world sees none of it. They only see the lie. And sometimes, the lie is exhausting. There are moments when the urge to break character is a physical ache in your chest. It happens when you are standing in the driveway and a neighbor makes a passive-aggressive comment about your lawn care. It happens when Marcus talks down to you about a stock he just bought, explaining basic financial concepts to you like you are a child, while he is quietly drowning in credit card debt. In those moments, the ego screams. The ego wants to pull out the phone, open the Vanguard app, and shove the 7-figure balance in their faces. The ego wants to obliterate their condescension with mathematical violence. The ego wants to prove that you won, but you don't. You bite the inside of your cheek. You smile. You agree with them. Because you know that the moment you prove you won, you actually lose. If you show Marcus the screen, you don't get his respect. You get his envy. You get his rationalization that you must have gotten lucky. You fundamentally alter the structure of your children's relationships with their cousins. You invite the chaos of the world inside the walls of your fortress. The ego is expensive. The silence is free. The climax of this decade-long deception doesn't happen at a restaurant. It doesn't happen in front of an audience. It happens on a random Tuesday in November. It is 6:15 in the morning. The house is completely dark, except for the small, warm light above the stove. The kids are still asleep. The heater kicks on in the hallway. You are sitting at the kitchen island with your laptop open. Sarah is standing at the counter, pouring hot water into a French press. She is wearing an oversized, faded college sweatshirt. You pull up the quarterly net worth tracking spreadsheet. You log into the accounts. You input the current balances. You update the checking, the savings, the 529s, the 401ks, and the taxable brokerage. You highlight the bottom cell. The formula calculates. You stare at the number. You don't say anything. You just turn the laptop around so it faces the kitchen counter. Sarah presses the plunger down on the coffee. She walks over. She stands behind you, resting her chin on your shoulder, her hands wrapping around your arms. She looks at the screen. The number at the bottom of the spreadsheet is $1,204,310. There is no champagne. There is no confetti. There is no Facebook post announcing your financial independence to people you haven't spoken to in 6 years. There is just the hum of the refrigerator, the smell of dark roast coffee, and the heavy, profound weight of absolute security. You feel Sarah exhale against your neck. You reach up and hold her hand. You are entirely, mathematically free. If you both lost your jobs today, you would not lose the house. You would not pull the kids from their schools. You could float for a decade without changing a single thing about your Tuesday mornings. You have bought the ultimate luxury, the ability to exist on your own terms, completely insulated from the terror of the American economy. And nobody knows but the two of you. We did it, Sarah whispers in the quiet kitchen. We did, you say. You close the laptop. The screen goes black. In 2 hours, you will put on a completely ordinary shirt. You will get into a completely ordinary car. You will drive to work, and you will sit in traffic next to people who are frantic, stressed, and drowning in debt they took on to impress strangers. You will get to the office, and you will complain about the price of coffee. You will nod when your coworkers talk about how hard it is to get ahead. You will play the character perfectly. You will let them think you are trapped, just like they are. Because keeping the secret isn't about hiding your money. It is about protecting your peace. And as you pull out of your driveway, glancing at the peeling paint on your garage door, you realize that the greatest financial decision you ever made wasn't buying the index funds. It was deciding that you didn't need anyone else to know you bought them.